a child, I always loved the Christmas season for many reasons, but one in particular had to do with the decoration of Christmas lights. Now, if you were like me as a child, you remember that sometime around Thanksgiving, maybe just after Thanksgiving, there was always that first night when you were driving around and you saw that first glimmer in the distance of the small twinkling glowing lights that somebody had just put out. And now as an adult, when I drive around, I still feel that same excitement when I start to see those Christmas lights put out. You know, when I was younger, it was always a sign of something magical happening. You know, as much as people would change their house throughout the seasons during the day, it somehow seems that the changing of a house or of a yard or of, you know, the way a house looks in the evening, in the nighttime, is reserved for the Christmas season. Those lights, the glowing stars, and now, of course, you know, a million inflatable things sitting on people's front yards. But as a child, driving around and seeing those lights made the Christmas season seem somehow magical. And although they are never tied together in tradition, I, in my childhood mind, always equated Christmas lights with the Star of Bethlehem. I don't know why. Nobody told me. Nobody preached a message. But in my mind, it was always people's own tribute to that shining star that hung in the sky during the Christmas season. And that same star that hung thousands of years ago that directed the shepherds and the wise men to go and find the newborn Savior sitting in a manger with his parents, Mary and Joseph. And now as an adult, when I drive around and I see them, I still hold that awe and that wonder inside of me. You know, I can't imagine what it would be like to be a shepherd or to be a wise man or to be the shepherds in the field when we read about in Luke where they receive the visitation from the angels who are singing and then direct them to go find Jesus. I can't imagine what it would be to look up into the sky every single night for your entire life, to have the same landscape, to study the constellations, to know the consistency of the changing of the skies, and then to all of a sudden look up and see something that you have never seen before, something that wasn't a satellite like we have today. It wasn't something that even scientists could predict because they don't have the technology that we have. But as a shepherd, imagine sitting in the field. This is how you determine your direction. It's how you determine the seasons. It's how you know where you are. And yet here is something that has never before been seen in the sky. It is a new fixture or a new image that is directing you on a path you've never been on before. You know, shepherds and shepherd paths are something that the caretakers of sheep, the ones that steward the cattle of the field, they follow certain paths. They follow certain ways when they're out guarding the livestock. So now imagine you have a whole history of how you've done things. And now here comes something. It uses the same venue that you've used to navigate your course, and yet it's something completely new. And then the direction comes to you. Follow the star. You're familiar with charting your course by stars, and yet here is something brand new that you've never seen before, yet you're supposed to trust it just like you've trusted constellations for years before now. Now, the shepherds are commanded, follow the star, go on your own journey, go on a new journey, and at the end, you will find the Savior of the world. You know, I often think that that is how God speaks to us. That's how he brings intervention to us. He uses things that have a construct that we are already somewhat familiar with, and yet he intervenes with supernatural wisdom or supernatural display. And then he calls us to apply the same strength that we've developed in other areas of our life, but he calls us to apply that strength with a new supernatural phenomenon in our life. The shepherds knew how to follow the skies. What they didn't know was how to follow in this path for this star at this moment. And yet that is often often how God comes and in his providential nature, he sets things in motion in our life to take us to the very point of fulfillment, satisfaction, and salvation that we've been crying out for. I believe that if we will posture our hearts the way the shepherds did, we will stay true and disciplined to the things that God has called us to, and yet we will allow our faith to keep us always open and ready. We will find ourselves kicking fear in the face, stepping out in risk, knowing that it's not really a risk. It's really coming into alignment with the fulfillment of God's promises. You know, if the fulfillment of a promise usually means that the promise hasn't been fulfilled yet. And so oftentimes we try to judge if God's fulfilling a promise based on our experience in the past. But if it's a brand new promise, then we don't necessarily have a measuring stick to say, oh yeah, this is exactly the way it should go. Yet, God in his genius uses constructs we understand. He uses models and motivations that we've already perfected in our life. He combines those two things and he says, I know this is new, yet it's somehow familiar. I know this is a new path, yet it's somehow different. And yet it somehow relates to how you've always walked and how you've always trusted. Will you trust me now? Will you follow into something new you've not stepped into before? My prayer for you this holiday season is that you would take a moment and posture yourself like the shepherds. You would look through this for the supernatural intervention of the Father. And you would apply the same discipline of faith, the same progression of moving forward with a faithful task. And you would pursue, yet ever so boldly trusting, and the thing that you have yet to see get fulfilled. May the year 2021 be known as the year of supernaturally fulfilled promises. Man could not work itself into this moment, and yet God brought an intervention through a construct that man was familiar with, yet introduced a whole new landscape for their vision to focus on. This holiday season, my prayer for you is that you would experience that supernatural intervention, and yet your faith would keep you moving forward. That you would see the supernatural signs of God's love, his protection, his salvation for you, and you would move forward with him. This truly is the greatest time of year. It's the best season of all. The shepherds knew it when they met the Savior of the world, and yet we still are called today to meet him with that same faith, that same perseverance. May you and your home, your household, meet the saving power of Jesus in a way you've never experienced before this year. Merry Christmas to all of you on behalf of Momentum Ministries.